Welcome to The Couch, a retrospective review of theater here in the Chattanooga area. I'm your host, Garry Posey, and along with a rotating group of my peers and other theater professionals, we will be walking you through some of our experiences attending live theater in the Chattanooga area. You know, when I was in high school and just getting involved in the theater world, I thought everything I saw was amazing. Then I went to college and studied it. Then I went out in the world and experienced it. Then I went to graduate school and cemented my dogma. Then I came back to where it all started and became a producer. All of that made me watching theater very difficult. Even the shows I directed were difficult to watch. I was too critical and too vulnerable. So what's changed? Well, one of my missions with the Ensemble Theater at Chattanooga has always been to make the audience have greater expectations for their theater experiences, to influence us artists to push the envelope on subject matter, to engage your imaginations, to make you want to continue talking about your experience over coffee at the breakfast table the next morning, to be unforgettable. Now, it might be presumptuous of me to think that theater patrons in the Chattanooga area want something more than they are currently experiencing, but I'll take that risk. So with that being said, let's get reviewing. So this is the beginning of a series of, theater reviews we're going to be doing. We're tentatively calling this The Couch because we're on a couch. And it's a place for us to couch our ideas. Like I did there. That was silly. All right, but if you have a better idea, just leave your comments below and just, give us an idea about, I did think, hashtag Watch and Missed because these are all reviews of shows that we've seen. They've already closed, so that nothing that we can say or do will affect the business of the show, and that's really not what we're trying to do. This isn't a Siskel and Ebert kind of thing, where we're trying to inform your opinions about what you should or shouldn't see. You should see everything. Yes. That's what we think. Yes. There is so much great theater happening in Chattanooga. And even if it's not great theater, there's so much theater happening in Chattanooga that really everyone should have the opportunity to see it. So these reviews that we're going to do, I'd like for them to be short and sweet, but brevity is not the soul of my wit. And it's just an informal conversation between me and my guest. And my guest today is Christy Gallo. Christy was a student of mine at Chat State a long time ago. Yeah. And now we're really good friends, and we produce theater with ETC, but we're not here to pretend like we do the best stuff. We're just here to talk about what we've seen, and we're going to start with a production that we did, Dust, back in July. Dust by Rob Smith, a friend of mine from Chicago, a part of our Brave New Works new play series. So I guess we'll just we just get the conversation going.
Yeah, well, and for me, one of the cool things about Dust is Garry and I have literally waited over a decade to produce the show.
That's true. The very first experience Christy had with ETC was Dust, as a one-act at a staged reading called New Play Tuesdays back in 2009. Believe it or not. 2009. Yeah, and she was hooked with ETC from that point on. And it was, and like I said, the play was just a one act at that time. So that's kind of an interesting idea to see it has developed over the last 10 years. And in this production that we did back in July, Christy wasn't in the show; she just got to watch it. I didn't direct it; I just got to watch it too. So both of us are coming at this from a as unbiased as we can be.
Right.
I know, right?
Do you think it would be helpful to try to give a synopsis, like maybe one or two sentences, so that and obviously this is to be edited out, right? But so that people unfamiliar with it, like, because they can gather, reconciliation, but if we were to be like,
sure.
It's a story
so what the story's about? Yeah. So Carver is a sort of esteemed composer. And his daughter Lucia She doesn't think of herself as a prodigy, but she really is a very well-trained, talented violinist. And Lucia's mom, Carver's partner, she dies in an auto accident.
She does.
And that, we find this out in one of the flashbacks, but that sort of moment in time really derails the relationship of Lucia and Carver. Carver is an overbearing musician father, really kind of forcing Lucia into practicing a lot and writing her hard at concerts and being very hyper critical.
Yeah.
But Lucia maintains that because she respects her father's talent and ability. But once her mom dies and once that entity is gone out of the relationship, we start to see this schism in between the two of them. And so flash forward to now, out of that you get an exposition. Flash forward to now, Lucia gets in the mail her violin, which she has completely denounced and given up and moved on. In a package in the mail, she gets from her father her violin, and it really kind of sets her off. Yeah. And what you find out is that violin is a last-ditch effort for Carver to bring Lucia back into his life. So one of the main things about what I'm hoping to do with these reviews is to kind of help the audience understand some ideas that are present on stage at an event when you go see a live theater show, and so we call them conventions in the theater world.
In theater, dramatic conventions are the techniques that actors and directors employ to create a certain dramatic effect or style. It is an unwritten agreement between the audience and stage to create a willing suspension of disbelief. An example of convention may be using different colored lights to represent a day-night cycle, an actor moving downstage to deliver a monologue that the other characters cannot hear despite being spoken out loud, or characters not being rendered confused and terrified when another character suddenly breaks out into an orchestra-backed song mid-conversation.
In Dust, the primary convention that we had was how we played with time.
Yes.
So there are basically three sort of tracks of time, I think. There is a presence where Gioia's character, Gioia Fazzini, who plays the character of Lucia, sort of the protagonist in the story, I would say, where she is directly addressing the audience. All right, and the way in this particular production that seemed like to be one time period.
Oh, fair enough.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
So, and maybe, I don't know if that's what Rob, the playwright, intended, but definitely with Joseph's direction, when she addressed the audience, it's in and of itself a time period.
It was its own little capsule.
Right.
Yeah.
And then she jumps back into scenes with both her father, her best friend, and a student that she went to high school with, who is now a doctor, her father's doctor, and those are present time scenes as well, but they're also they're memories because of how those directed dress scenes are dealt with,
Yes.
but they're not like distant memories. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't know how best
The most recent past.
Yeah, the most recent past. That's a good way to look at it. And then there are scenes that are like flashbacks, which take us all the way back to when Gioia's character was a student in high school and in college, and showing the relationship of her and her father and how that dealt. At the very base of Dust, I think, is a pretty standard storyline. It's just a reconciliation story. Father and a daughter reconciling and how it's told.
Well, yes. Yeah. I enjoyed the, I really felt it portrayed the clunkiness of reconciliation really nicely. And that reconciliation is not a nice linear experience, that it has peaks and valleys, and I thought how it was written really exposed the nature of that within relationships.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you thought that was in the script or if that was in the performance and staging of it, because I think that it was in both. I really feel like Joseph was really honest to Rob's sort of attention to the clunkiness of reconciliation.
That's a great question. Yeah. I think you're right. There's directorial sensitivity to some of the nuance in there that, and also it was performed exceedingly well to show those arcs, to show that internal battle.
So the challenge in a show like this that jumps around in time frames, and even time frames that aren't like so clearly defined, the challenge becomes, does the story stay intact? Yeah. From both the writing and from both the director's standpoint, because, an audience, a lot of us, well, I wouldn't say an audience, I would say the general populace, we think of things linearly, we from the beginning to the end, and there's a pretty sensible time frame or timeline. And so when we step into shows that have this convention of time that fluctuates and moves in strange directions, you really have to be sensitive to keeping the story straight for the audience, because they can get lost in trying to figure out where we are.
Yes.
And I really think that the way that Joseph handled that by keeping certain areas to certain things, I thought it could have been a little more clear, but it was clear enough to not lose me in the story.
Absolutely. Well, and one of the things that impressed me is it's my understanding that Joseph was a first-time director on this piece. Is that right?
It's not his first show, but it's his first show with ETC.
Okay. Yeah, I was really impressed with his handling of the non-linear storytelling, and in particular her monologues to the audience. I thought they were very well handled.
Yeah. So the major convention of time jumping around, and I thought it was handled very well in the show, and that's something that, as we do more of these, we really want to talk about the conventions that we see in the shows and how well they're taken care of, because that's really sort of the director and the actors and the designer's contribution to the story is, and how they tell it. The playwright has put the words on the page, and sometimes, like in this instance, the playwright does invoke the convention of time.
Yes.
But then again, how we handle that, scenically or costume or directorially, or even with lights and sound, those are all elements that we collaboratively put into the work. So I think that's really important. All right, so dissecting the show a little further, what was the one thing that you liked least? The one thing that you were like, that was a missed opportunity, or I wish that I didn't really feel like that moment worked.
Okay. Hopefully it's okay to venture into this territory, but I would say there were a few staging things that I felt might have been just a little bit awkward. /stage. I like stage business, not a ton of stage business, but I think it helps focus a moment. And so for me, that was just something I would have liked to have seen a little more. Yeah, does that make sense? So I hope it's okay I ventured into that territory. I by no means was like super distracted by it, but those are little details I like to notice.
Yeah, well, another convention that was utilized in this show was the idea of a unit set.
A unit set in theater is a style of set design in which the general layout of the set remains the same from start to finish, while different locations can be represented by altering the lighting or minor changes to the props or set pieces, such as furniture and decor. Oftentimes, no change takes place, and the location is instead implied by the dialogue.
So the unit set, but I felt like there were moments that the unit set was not utilized to its full capacity.
I do agree with that.
And so I kind of wish that would have been utilized a little bit more efficiently. And also with unit sets and multiple entrances and exits, you have the ability to keep the flow going.
Yeah.
And while the flow was not necessarily a problem with Dust, I felt like it had a nice pace to it. There were just moments where, like, there were clunky entrances and exits where it seemed like we had traffic jams that were unnecessary.
I do agree.
And that, so those moments, you know, I think for an audience pull you out because you start to worry that someone is coming in the wrong place or exiting in the wrong place, or oh my gosh, they're about to hit their head on that low hanging flat or whatever.
Yeah,
you know
you become aware of the set change moment where it's nice when those are seamless and you're not taken out.
So I think that for me, that was, I just would have liked to have seen the set utilized a little bit more, and then, you know, and the lights. I just felt like it was too dark in some places.
I do agree with that, and I've always wondered if that's a venue, you know, struggle specific to Working Legs, but yes, there were a couple dark spots. It could have been intentional. It could have been a choice.
Well,
I
as
don't
the
know.
light designer, they were.
Oh, you were.
So.
We should just ask you.
I didn't feel like I did a good job with the lights. I could, and you know, it's about timing, and there's no excuse for it. But I really feel like that I'll just take the blame on that, and we'll go with it. All right. What about one moment in the show that you were like, this moment really sealed the deal for me?
Oh, okay. Well, you brought it up already. It's the scene where, you know, Lucia is playing the music that Carver wrote, but it's not the music he thought he wrote. I mean, he's just kind of unwinding, and you know, oh my gosh, I thought that scene, it's honestly stayed with me because I felt like so much was revealed by both characters. I felt that Joya and Bruce handled it with great pacing and great depth. So that would be... Yeah.
You know, for me, there's a scene between Lucia and Ari. Ari is the high school friend who used to be somewhat portly and now is not as portly.
What a term! You're not as portly
as you were before. But he's also Carver's doctor. He's his general practitioner, and so Lucia and Ari have this moment together, which, you know, I think, you know, I love the fact that Ari's married and he cheats on his wife with Lucia in this moment, and Lucia is cheating on her life in general because it's just
that's good.
One more thing that she's like trying to put in the way of dealing with her father.
Yes, that's good.
You know, and so I love how Rob set that up, but you know, they have bought some really cheap bourbon from a liquor store that tastes like sewer water or whatever it is.
And he's a doctor. That was a moment where I'm like, the doctor didn't spring for the good bourbon? Come on.
They're just on a bench on, you know, and, you know, it's so cliche to have a bench scene. It's so cliche. Like, you know, there's an entire improv exercise built around a park bench, you know. And so, but in the moment I was like this simple moment and the two stories that they were telling, and I don't know, that and the way that it was done with Joey, who just happens to be married to Christy, and I'm not saying that just because I'm not saying that he was good just because she's here. But anyway, Joey and Joya, I just was like...
It's hard to say.
Joey and Joya.
Joey and Joya.
Yeah, so I just really felt like that moment encapsulated the entire show for me, and really said this is something that, you know, the cast and creative should be proud of. All right, I just wanted to remind everyone that coming up next for ETC is A Kiss for Cinderella. It'll be in the middle of October. It's written by J.M. Barrie. You can find more info at ETC's website, www.ensembletheaterchattanooga.com. And I'm directing that one, so I won't be reviewing it. Someone else will be sitting here talking to maybe Christy or maybe somebody else. But anyway, I hope you guys get to come see it. It's a very touching show.
I just want you guys to remember, don't let our compliments inflate your head, and don't you dare let our criticisms deflate your heart. Keep creating.